Adanna was known in Osupa as the quiet, simple girl with magic in her fingers. She spent her days stitching clothes by hand, using a small sewing machine that often broke down. She didn't complain. Instead, she poured love into every stitch, every thread. Her dream was small: to support her partner, Queasy, while he finished university. She believed in him more than she believed in herself. Every naira she made from sewing dresses and selling them in the local market went straight to Queasy's books, transport, and food. While others partied or chased big city dreams, Adanna worked late into the night under a dim bulb, her fingers bleeding but her heart full of hope. She told everyone, "One day, Queasy will make it, and we'll both rise." The townspeople admired her loyalty but warned her not to give too much. Still, she smiled and said, "Love is sacrifice." Queasy promised her a future, whispered sweet dreams of a house in Lagos, a fashion studio for her, a better life together. Adanna held on to those promises like gold. She was never jealous of those who had more. She was just happy to give what she could. Even when she had to skip meals or wear old clothes, she did it for love. To the world, she was just a local tailor. But inside, Adanna was a quiet storm, and soon, the world would know her name. Things started to change the moment Queasy got the job in Lagos. It was everything Adanna had prayed for, a high-paying position at a big company. She danced when he told her the news, hugging him tightly, tears of joy in her eyes. She believed their struggle was finally over. But Lagos changed Queasy. He stopped calling as much. When he did, his voice felt cold, distant. He no longer asked how her sewing was going or if she had eaten. Instead, he talked about his new office, new friends, and fancy restaurants. Adanna thought he was just busy. She kept sewing, saving, and waiting. Then one day, without warning, he stopped answering her calls. Weeks passed. No word. No goodbye. When she finally saw him again, it was through photos online. Queasy was smiling next to a beautiful woman, Amira. She was everything Adanna wasn't: rich, stylish, and popular. The caption read, "My world." Adanna's heart shattered. Queasy didn't just leave her, he erased her. When she finally reached him, he said the words that burned into her soul. "Adanna, you're too local. I've moved on." That was it. After everything she gave, all the love, all the sacrifice, he discarded her like old fabric. And now he was showing off his new fiancée everywhere. Amira was a socialite from Abuja, always dressed in designer clothes, attending parties, walking red carpets. Adanna cried for nights, but something inside her began to rise. The pain didn't break her, it lit a fire. While Queasy flaunted his new life, Adanna picked up her needle. She wiped her tears with fabric scraps and whispered to herself, "I may be local, but I'm not small." What Queasy didn't know was that he had just walked away from gold. And soon, the world would see it shine. Adanna cried until her eyes were dry. The pain of losing Queasy was like a heavy stone in her chest. She didn't understand how someone she gave everything to could turn away so easily. But after the tears, something changed. She looked at her sewing machine, at the fabrics stacked in the corner, and realized that her hands still worked. Her dream was still alive. She decided she would not let heartbreak destroy her. Instead, she would let it push her. So she got up the next morning, cleaned her tiny workspace, and began to sew like never before. Every stitch carried her pain, every design carried her hope. She poured all her emotions into her work: sadness, strength, and silent fire. She called her new brand Ada Styles. It was simple, just her name and her style, but it felt powerful. One day, she made a beautiful dress from leftover fabrics. She posted a picture of it on Instagram with a short caption: "Handmade with love. From pain to power. #Ada Styles." She didn't expect much. She only had a few followers. But life has its own way of turning stories around. A popular actress from Lagos somehow found the post and loved the design. She ordered a dress, wore it to an event, and tagged Adanna. That single post changed everything. In just hours, Adanna's phone blew up. Hundreds of likes. Dozens of messages. People wanted her clothes. They wanted her story. They wanted Ada Styles. Adanna stood in the middle of her small room, watching the notifications come in. Tears rolling down her cheeks again. But this time, They were tears of joy. She smiled and whispered, "This is just the beginning." While Queasy was busy living a fake high life, Adanna was building something real. Something beautiful from the pieces of her broken heart. She didn't need him to shine. She had her gift, her grit, and now, the world's attention. Adanna was in her small workshop, sewing as usual, when an email popped up on her phone. At first, she didn't even open it. She thought it was just another random message. But something told her to look again. When she read it, her hands began to shake. It was from one of the biggest luxury hotel chains in the country. They were launching new branches across Nigeria and wanted her, Adanna of Ada Styles, to design the uniforms for all their hotels. They had seen her viral post, followed her work, and were impressed by her talent. At first she thought it was a mistake. Why would such a big company choose a small-town girl? But it was no mistake. They believed in her. The contract was huge, the biggest thing that had ever happened to her. This one job changed everything. She hired staff, got better equipment, and moved into a bigger space. Soon, she was flying to meetings in Lagos and Abuja, sitting at tables with CEOs, hotel owners, and fashion editors. She was no longer just Adanna the tailor. She was now a respected designer. At one of the events for the hotel launch, she entered the room in a beautiful outfit she made herself. Heads turned. People whispered her name. And then across the room, she saw someone she hadn't seen in a long time, Amira. She was laughing with friends, holding a glass of wine, looking just as glamorous as always. But this time, the spotlight wasn't on her. It was on Adanna. The same world that once ignored Adanna was now celebrating her. The same elite crowd that once called her too local was now trying to shake her hand. She didn't need to say anything to Amira that night. Her presence, her success, and her grace said it all. She had entered a new world, not because of someone else, but because of her own hands, her own hard work. From heartbreak to headlines, Adanna had made it, and she was just getting started. Adanna's life was moving faster than she ever imagined. After the hotel uniform project, the media couldn't stop talking about her. Magazines featured her face on their covers. Blogs called her the fashion phoenix, and everyone wanted to know the girl who turned pain into power. Investors started reaching out, offering support and funding to grow Ada Styles. At first, Adanna was nervous. She had never handled such big business talks before. But she learned quickly. She studied at night, asked questions, and surrounded herself with people who believed in her vision. Soon, she opened her first real boutique in Lagos, a bright, modern store filled with her best pieces. Customers lined up. Orders doubled. Then she opened in Port Harcourt. Then in Abuja. 3 cities, 3 boutiques, and one powerful brand that started from a tiny room in Osupa. But it didn't stop there. One day, Adanna received a formal letter inviting her to be a judge at a top fashion accelerator program in Abuja. They wanted her to help young designers grow, just like she had. She sat there staring at the letter, her heart full. Just a few years ago, she was the girl no one noticed. The girl who stitched clothes alone at night while the world slept. And now she was being asked to lead, to inspire, to judge. When she walked into the judging hall for the first time, cameras flashed and people clapped. She smiled humbly, wearing one of her own bold designs. She had come full circle, not just as a designer but as a woman who had risen through the fire. From heartbreak to headlines, from market stalls to magazine covers, Adanna had built not just a business, but a name that meant strength. And now, she was opening doors for others. She didn't just build a brand. She built an empire. And it was only the beginning. The list of applicants for the Fashion Accelerator program was long, filled with fresh names and young talents hoping for a second chance. Adanna sat with the other judges, calmly reviewing each application one by one. She read stories of struggle, passion, and dreams still waiting to come true. But then her eyes stopped on a name she never thought she'd see again, Amira. Her hands paused. For a moment, she couldn't believe it. The same Amira who once stood on magazine covers, walked red carpets, and called Adanna too local. The same Amira who had once taken Queasy's arm and smiled proudly for the cameras. Now, she was here, asking for help. Adanna took a deep breath and continued reading. Amira's luxury fashion brand had collapsed. Her business was drowning in debt, her investors had pulled out, and customers had moved on. Her words were humble, almost desperate. She was seeking a business partner, someone who could help her rebuild. She didn't know that the woman reading her story was the same one she had once pushed aside without a second glance. Adanna felt a mix of emotions. Shock, sadness, a strange kind of calm. Life had turned the tables in a way no one could predict. Not long ago, Amira had everything: money, fame, attention. And Adanna had only her sewing machine and a dream. But now, it was Adanna sitting at the top, being asked to offer a hand. She didn't smile, didn't laugh. She just sat there quietly, realizing how life can shift in ways no one expects. The girl who was once too local was now being asked to lead. And the woman who once had it all was now looking up, hoping for a chance. This wasn't revenge. This was real life. A full circle moment. And soon they would meet. Not as rivals, not as enemies, but as two women standing on different sides of a story only destiny could write. The interview room was bright and quiet, filled with the soft sound of papers turning and pens scribbling notes. Adanna sat calmly at the center of the long table, dressed in a stylish outfit from her own Ada Styles line. She looked powerful but graceful, like a woman who had truly arrived. As one applicant left, the next name was called: Amira. The door opened and in she walked, holding her presentation folder tightly, her eyes focused and voice polite. She looked different now, still beautiful, but not as loud, not as proud. There was a quietness about her, a weight she carried that Adanna noticed right away. Amira greeted the judges, gave her introduction, and began to speak about her brand. She talked about her past success, the crash of her company, and how she was now looking for a business partnership to help her rise again. She never once looked twice at Adanna. To her, this was just another business meeting. Just another panel of experts. She didn't recognize the woman who once stood in the shadows while she wore diamonds on Queasy's arm. Adanna stayed calm and professional, asking questions in a polite tone, treating Amira just like every other applicant. But inside, memories rushed in. The market days, the heartbreak, the silent tears she once cried. Still, she kept her face steady, showing no hint of the past. As the interview ended, Amira smiled politely and turned to leave. That's when Adanna, in a soft and steady voice, said, "Tell Queasy I said hello." Amira froze mid-step. Her body stiffened. Slowly, she turned around and looked straight at Adanna. Really looked. Her eyes widened in shock. She finally saw her. It was Adanna. The same girl she once ignored. The same girl she once replaced. But now the roles had changed. Amira was the one asking for help. And Adanna? She had nothing left to prove. With just one sentence, she reminded Amira exactly who she was, not with anger, but with quiet strength. The sun was shining softly through the tall windows of Adanna's fashion studio. It was a peaceful afternoon. Her team moved around with focus, working on new designs, measuring fabrics, and preparing for an upcoming fashion showcase. The place buzzed with energy, creativity, and success. Adanna stood in her office, reviewing sketches, when her assistant walked in and said, "There's someone here to see you. He says his name is Queasy." For a moment she was silent. The name sounded like a ghost from another life. Calmly she nodded and said, "Let him in." Queasy stepped into the room slowly, looking nothing like the confident man who once left her behind. His expensive clothes were gone. He looked tired, worn out, and nervous. He gave a weak smile and tried to speak casually, but his voice cracked. "Adanna, I heard about everything. You're doing so well. I wanted to talk." She didn't say a word. She just watched him quietly. He began pouring out his story. After he got the job in Lagos, everything seemed perfect. He had money, fame, and Amira. But when Amira's business failed, she walked away. His company downsized, and he lost his job. Now he was back in the same city he once left behind, broke, alone, and filled with regret. "I made a mistake," he said, looking at her with pleading eyes. "I was foolish. You believed in me when no one else did. I didn't see your worth, Adanna." She listened, calm and collected. Then she stepped aside and opened the studio door. Standing there, ready with a notepad in hand, was Amira. now working as her assistant. Adanna looked back at Queasy and said, "You left me for gold. Turns out, I was the mine." And just like that, she walked past him with grace and power, leaving him in the silence of his own regrets. She didn't need revenge. Her success was her response, louder than words, stronger than pain. Queasy stood in the middle of Adanna's fashion studio, surrounded by stunning designs, glowing lights, and the quiet hum of sewing machines. It all felt unreal. This wasn't the small-town girl he once left behind. This was a woman who had built something powerful with her own hands. He looked nervous, unsure, clearly not the confident man he used to be. His clothes were simple, his eyes tired. He had come looking for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe a second chance. Adanna walked into the room with quiet elegance. Her steps were steady, her head held high. She didn't rush, didn't speak right away. She just looked at him, like he was a name from an old chapter she had already closed. Queasy tried to smile, tried to act like nothing had happened. "Adanna," he began. "I know I made mistakes. I didn't see who you really were. I see it now. You've done so well. I just wanted to talk. Maybe we could start again." Adanna looked at him with calm eyes. No anger. No sadness. Just quiet strength. Then she said in the softest but clearest voice, "You left me for gold. Turns out, I was the mine." Those few words hit harder than anything else she could have said. Queasy's face fell. He had no reply. There was nothing left to say. He had walked away from real treasure. And now it was too late. Adanna walked past him without another word. And there, standing just outside the office door, was Amira. She held a notepad and gave a small nod, waiting for instructions. The woman who once took Adanna's place was now working for her. Adanna didn't even glance back. She simply kept walking, with Amira following behind her. Queasy turned to watch them, his heart sinking with every step they took away from him. He had once thought Adanna wasn't good enough. Now she was everything he had ever wanted, and more. But she didn't need him anymore. She had become a queen. And all he could do was watch her walk away. Just a memory in her story. Adanna's rise became the story everyone wanted to tell. From the small market stalls of Osupa to the shining lights of runways across the continent, her journey inspired millions. One video clip of her saying, "You left me for gold. Turns out I was the mine," spread like wildfire online. People everywhere shared her story, calling her the true definition of strength, grace, and comeback. Every blog, fashion magazine, and TV station wanted to talk to the girl who turned Heartbreak into a fashion empire. Adanna didn't seek fame, but it found her. She was called the Queen of Comebacks on magazine covers. Her designs were worn by celebrities, her quotes used in motivational speeches, and her brand, Ada Styles, became a household name. Young girls looked up to her. Struggling women found hope in her story. She became more than just a designer. She became a symbol. Meanwhile, Amira and Queasy slowly faded into the background. Their names were barely mentioned, except as footnotes in Adanna's powerful journey. People remembered them not for who they were, but for how they treated her. And that made her victory even sweeter. Adanna kept moving forward. She opened design schools, mentored young talents, and continued to build her empire with quiet confidence. She never looked back in anger. Her success spoke for itself. What started with pain turned into purpose. What was once rejection became recognition. Adanna's story wasn't just about fashion. It was about finding your worth, standing tall and shining, even after the world tries to dim your light.